Hello, bonjour, Annie, hola. My name is Garrett Ryan, and I am with Artist Relations here at Fringe North this season. I am very happy to be back here on our Fringe North podcast, which we're going to be doing until the festival begins on August 16th. I am so happy to be joined here today by Avery McMillan. Um, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Avery. Pronouns are she, they, and this year I'm bringing my solo play called Itinerary to Fringe North.
Amazing. And this is your third year with Fringe. That's right, right?
That is correct, and it's my first year in person. I've done digitally the past 2 years, when 2021 was all digital, and then yeah.
Fantastic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this show that you're bringing? And I'm excited to hear about the differences in approaching it digitally versus in person. But yeah, let's chat a little bit about your show.
Yeah, so I first wrote it for an assignment for my playwriting course in the fall. So we were assigned a 15-page solo play. And then kind of since then, it's developed a little bit more. I had an excerpt read at Play Shelter. And really, the inspiration kind of for this play came from the story of my great grandmother uh, taking the train to Fort Payne and then seeing some furniture outside in the mud and thinking that was kind of funny until realizing it was her own. So from there, it just kind of it's not about like my great grandmother. It's like its own thing. It's very much, I think, I'm also like I'm majoring in drama and gender studies, and I think it's very much kind of informed by the gender studies part as well. In addition to kind of doing what I think theater should do. Yeah,
Amazing. And well, I'm excited to see it. I've heard an excerpt from it at Play Smelter, like you mentioned. Um, I I'm interested because I've obviously we spoke last year about your piece. What is it feeling like getting ready to do this in person versus the digital format?
in some ways it's a bit more daunting because I did not perform in mine last year. I
Mhm.
had three actors who like are my classmates who I had join me to perform and record, and we just recorded it, and then like okay, that's good, let's submit it. Whereas this kind of it's live, but it's yeah, I think still like a similar approach to being like, you know what, it'll be what it is. Um, and yeah, I've just gotta like learn how to act again because it's been a few years since I have. Um, but other than that, I think with Fringe, the really like great thing for me is like it really forces you to do like, okay, what is realistic for me to be able to do in this context? And yeah, so I think this is just another version of what is realistic to do this year.
Very cool. In terms of realistic, and is this would you say you're still sort of developing the piece further post Fringe, or like this isn't the final stop along the way? It's like a one stop on the journey.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really hoping to develop this piece. And also, like with the piece I did last year, I'm in the process of writing a stage version of that, whereas that was an audio drama.
Hmm. That's very cool. I loved your piece last year, so I'm excited to see that as well. So last year you mentioned you worked with the actors. I know this is a solo play. Do you have any other collaborators working with you?
This year will just be me. That's kind of again, it's what is realistic to do this year. It's like,
Right.
oh, I'll be the Sue.
Mhm.
And then I'm getting some help from my like mom and grandma and like securing those like
Oh,
little
amazing.
little costume pieces. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to mention in terms of the realism, or I was going to ask rather, what I know a little bit from talking to you that it's relatively minimalistic in terms of staging. But I'm wondering if you could kind of share a little bit about what we could expect to actually see on the stage.
Yeah, I think it might be kind of confusing, but like quite imaginative. Is one of like I think I would describe it in really um not it's like realistic for me to accomplish, but in terms of like theatrically far from realist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think yeah, part of it is it's very much I'm telling a story and the characters are telling stories to each other. Um, so in this way, it's like the experience of telling a story is very much central to the experience of this piece.
Interesting.
And then like through that, really what like the audience can think about and explore. Um, yeah, because like I'm not saying anything like super overtly.
Hmm.
So it's all ambiguous and in there, but in that way, I think I get to explore those things as I'm writing, and then the audience can kind of take what they do from it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Is this, I know your, well, I, I'm interested to see how you actually describe this sort of genre that you typically write in, because I know it's very unique. And I don't know if how you sort of quantify it, and then if this piece sort of fits neatly in that, or if it's a bit of a shift.
I think it fits very neatly. Yeah, I don't know how I would quantify it. I did write, so recently I did a course in feminist sustainability. And for my final assignment, I wrote like a preface to the play that I'm performing. So there are like a few aspects that I used. One was this, there's this book called Ghostly Matters. So it's about haunting and sociology.
Oh,
And
I've read that. It's by
by
who?
Avery Gordon.
Yes, yes, I read it for one of my MA classes. That's cool.
Yeah, so from that, I would say that like haunting is part
Yes.
of what I'm writing. Like, so there are two like aspects of what Avery Gordon says of being like this like important like theoretical statement of life is complicated. And one is that the like social forces in any like historically situated like society are like not as apparent or easily identified as we might think and just giving them names. And then
Mhm.
the other part is like complex personhood of like no one is just like good or like bad or like removed from like the social forces that are acting in our lives in any way. So I think I'm not like I think we could say that the play is a bit of like a ghost in that it's like a
Yeah.
signifier of the haunting that is like taking place. Um, and then there's also a line of being like haunting is enchantment in a disenchanted world. So I think there is a lot of magic
Cool.
in my writing as well. Um,
Love that.
so that was one thing. And then as well, Ursula K. Le Guin's carrier bag theory of fiction. So in this way, it's like rather than the hero's journey of like being centered around conflict, having the clear beginning and ending,
Mhm.
uh, it's not that. It's just a collection of things being packaged together in a narrative that extends like before and after and is I also like to think of theater as like part of life rather than separated. So we experience the event of theater within life as a way perhaps to understand the world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I, I'm I love how academic your approach is to the work. It's great. It's a very reminiscent to a lot of the work I saw doing the grad level theater studies. Like it's I especially yeah the Avery Gordon work was a big piece that we had to focus on doing some of that work. Are you planning to kind of continue that academic route? I know that's kind of where you're at now, but I know you said you're also in what was the gender studies? What was the specific program name?
It's just called Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. It's the program at UTM.
Amazing. And is that the plan to keep going forward a little bit, doing that kind of stuff, bridging the theater side with some of the theory?
Yeah, I think yeah, the like where theater and gender studies overlap, especially
Yeah.
when thinking about like environment and sustainability is like kind of that like little niche that I'm like in right now. And um, may think about continuing if grad school is a possibility. Yeah.
I, let's say right now you absolutely should, and it I mean, what area of sustainability and theater are you interested in right now? Because that was another thing that I studied in my MA a little bit in sustainability within the actual like theater infrastructure, like building wise. But I know there's a whole ton of different areas. Like some people it's sustainability in the actual performance itself. Some people it's with like the tech, the costumes. Like I'm interested to see like where you're kind of interested in that.
I think in like the practice. So like yeah, like in the way that you just of being alive in like
Yeah,
a feminist way.
cool.
Kind of yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I love I definitely I would push you into doing some further grad studies because I want to read your work. It's a lot of the stuff that you're talking about now sounds so interesting. Do you have any other big influences in your work? Within academia, outside academia, within playwriting, dramaturgy, like who are the people you're sort of drawing from, if anyone?
Yeah, I think for this piece specifically, there are a few kind of plays that I've watched like while writing and before that kind of I think influenced slightly where I was going with it. I think one was Steph and Her Friends that I read and saw the Theatre Arundel production of in the spring last year. So that was one. Um, and very much in terms of like situating this like dinner party next to the train tracks, I was like, it can't be Pepe and her friends. It can't be Pepe and her friends. Just like, but the similarities I think would be in terms of just obviously there's one person in my play, but like who is playing multiple characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Pepe and her friends is like this ensemble based cast of women who are like it's set in the 1930s. There was like very cool for anyone who doesn't know by Maria Irene Fernez, and the original production took place in the like and some productions now where like you go into the different rooms and the second there's like three acts and the second one they move between the rooms and like all of the scenes are happening at the same time but like you're in different groups. And it's just very cool and um yeah and like in that I think there are a lot of themes happening, but underneath like kind of the subtext of just like people talking to each other, uh, which is interesting to me. And then I think second would be what is like my favorite play that has been since I've seen it, which was just Cockroach by Jeff Poet Tarragon in the fall. And I think Garrett has heard me say this before because I'm just like,
Yes,
um,
I think we've talked about this that I was with Jeff in the studio as he was developing it, and I adore that piece. It's so good.
it is like I think just an example of like this is what I think theater should be doing. So and then I submitted Itinerary to the U of T Spotlight Playwriting Competition, and he was one of the judges and gave me very good feedback.
Oh,
So that
amazing.
was like I felt like a really big like fan moment there. It was like
The
it was
nicest guy.
amazing.
I love
Yeah.
him so much. Yeah, he's helped me a lot in terms of like the business of theater. He knows his way around grants and things like better than anyone I've ever spoken to. He just knows the industry and he's such a lovely person. Yeah, that's amazing that you had that opportunity. Um, cool. I'm curious how you kind of got on this path into doing this kind of work because it is very unique. I think it's like just hearing your writing. Um, it's so unique to you, and I love hearing it. And like, what's the sort of what does the journey look like that has gotten you to this place?
I'm not exactly sure. I think I started writing when I was very, very young. Like as a little child who could like learn, who like knew how to read and write. And I like I was just writing often. I think a lot of that was more in like the literary side though, of like and I think even my start in theater, like I think was first literary of just like reading books and then like acting them out
Mhm.
for fun when I was a kid before I even like got into like formal theater. Um, and then I did a lot of poetry. Uh, and like I was like that was kind of in like elementary school and like for specifically for assignments, as well as in high school. And then I think actually one of the first plays that I wrote, which was for just like an English class, like we basically for my grade 12 English class, which is maybe a pretty standard thing, is like you read a book and they have to do a presentation on it and an essay on it and two creative submissions that go with it.
Right.
So I read Mrs. Dalloway and then wrote a stream of consciousness Cinderella to kind of as one of the um,
Cool.
like creative portions of that. I think there is some stream of consciousness happening in my writing. I think a lot of it is just I think part of it is the way that I think and just like making associations is kind of the last thing that maybe don't seem that obvious.
Mhm.
Uh, and also moving kind of between different observations is also a huge like I think a big component of my writing. And then I think in terms of like the structure, just in terms like of the theater side of it, like not so much writing.
Mhm.
Also not entirely sure. Like it's just I think a lot of just different like having been like I've been involved in theater for a while, uh like a decade now of being involved in theater, and I think just getting different looks at parts of it and really even like when I was like first involved, just being like really curious as to like, okay, what is all of the things that is happening? Um, and then getting to form my own opinions about that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. And I know you participated in our first, I believe, EARP at Fringe North. Um, that was before my time working for the festival. So I'm curious what that experience was like. And if you want to just give everyone a bit of a refresher as to what that program is.
Yeah, so the Emerging Artist in Residency program is for emerging artists who I think that was the first year was 2021, I believe.
Believe so. Yeah, I think it was right like our first year post pandemic it was launched.
Yeah, so to kind of give a little bit more support than like you had other artists. So like in that context, especially because it was like a digital submission, like we had like Fringe North recorded it for us and like had the stage for us. And then also just like a little bit of mentorship, um, which I think, yeah, kind of varies depending on like what you need. So I think like for me, it was like um, a lot of more like the production side of it was kind of where I had questions and then got little answers to and stuff. So for that piece, I did a play called The Vinyl Problem that was um, based on like Sherlock Holmes tropes, but also about like these two like teenage friends who are like, we just want to buy this record, and then are kind of like it's not there, and it's like, oh, it's a mystery, and then oh, it wasn't actually a mystery, we just didn't ask questions. So that's not a very good summary. But that was what it was. It was a two-person show. I had my best friend Lindrina playing the other character, and we also had a musical portion. It was a lot of, and both of us alternated playing the like kind of supporting characters. So that was, yeah, and the part of that was like a framework of it's not that you're watching these two people who had this experience putting on a play of that experience was like kind of built into the writing of it.
Interesting. I like that. It seems like you're very interested in the sort of meta theatrical type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I not so much in my writing, but as a theater spectator, I love meta theater. So that's really cool. Um, I noticed as well, you said in that first piece you did with Fringe, and also this piece that you're bringing to the festival this year, you were playing multiple characters. That's true. What does the sort of approach look like there? I know, I mean, actors have their different approaches, but like often there's a lot of prep that goes into like the pre going out on that stage, like kind of getting into that headspace of the character. And I'm interested to see how you approach doing that with multiple personalities and things like that.
Yeah, so for the final problem, we basically, so we had several, like there were a few recurring characters that came back, like maybe they were there twice, but we would each play them a separate time. And for those, we just had costume pieces. So there was like a hat behind this was also like a very, like we had an elaborate set. But we had like a hat behind the thing that you could just like put on. It was like, so like we had those costumes to indicate.
Mhm.
For itinerary, not so much. There are costume changes, but that doesn't mean that they're not the person who's like it's even like as in the script, like there's a shift between so that maybe I should say who the characters are in my play. So
Sure.
there's the main character of Eloise is the one who has arrived at the station, is like, oh, there's my things aren't there, and then goes over to the dinner table and then's like, oh, I'm not actually alone here because there's a bunch of other people. And there are 8 chairs in total, 7 people. Uh, so Eloise is like the protagonist, and then there's kind of a somewhat antagonistic character in George, who's not really agreeing with everything, but also like nuanced, complex personhood in both and every front. So those are kind of like the two primary characters, and there's a shift where it's like George kind of takes over the middle part of the story, and then the jacket that is Eloise's comes off, but then the jacket comes back on, but then there are still George and Eloise, like as kind of the primary types of dialogue where between those two characters. So it's not necessarily like the costume signifying there.
Right. Interesting. And what do you think is the most challenging thing that has come with the development of this piece so far? I mean, as we said, you're still in the process of developing it, but thus far, what have you been sort of struggling with the most?
I think I struggled a lot with the title when I was like first writing it. It changed every single time. So for this, like the assignment structure of when I was writing this play, it was like first page, first 7 pages, all 15 pages. So every time I submitted it, it had a different title, but it was Itinerary by the last submission.
Cool.
It's just like it's hard to like sometimes I'll pick a title, it's like the first thing that I choose, and then everything kind of comes after that. In this case, it was different. It was like a very different approach where I like didn't really know exactly everything that would happen when I started writing it.
Yeah.
I just knew like this is the first page, this is where it gets you in the middle, and then okay, let's see how it ends. So it's kind of like not a way that I've written before. I'm typically like, for instance, like the Nows of Milton II and the Nearly Twenties, which was last year's. I had the title and like a scene by scene breakdown before I even started writing it, and then I just like hammered it down in 4 days. And
Cool.
that was like very similar for the Vinyl Problem, but this was like a much longer period of writing, and then even now developing further afterwards. So
Hmm.
that kind of been a different approach, but I think it's probably more sustainable going forward as trying to write and not always having 4 days to just write a play. Um, so
Yeah.
and then I
No, keep going. Sorry.
yeah, and then I think now it's like really figuring out the portrayal of multiple characters, um, specifically like as myself and like being connected to my body in that way. Like I know even when I was writing, I knew like, okay, like this character like leads with this part of their body, this character is like more here, and I like knew kind of the difference in postures between the characters as I was writing them. And I think that is like carries into this way that they speak as well. Um, but just like acting that and performing that is kind of where the challenge is now.
Yeah, I know you have mentioned previously that acting is not necessarily your favorite part of the production process. But it sounds like you have a good handle on how to approach the performance, which is it sounds really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing you portray these characters. I don't think I've seen you act before, so I'm looking forward to that. That'll be awesome. Um, I on the same kind of subject, just in terms of like individual components of the piece, um, rather than what is the most challenging, what is the thing that you think was like the guiding component that kind of pulled you out of that? Anything that was a bit harder? Like, what is something that kept kind of pulling you back to this piece, or like bringing you through the writing process, the development?
Well, as I wrote in my preface very recently, which honestly in some part was just so that I could explain what I'm doing better, so I have to talk about it. Um, I like to hold on to like one little like piece that I don't make clear, but that like is what kind of guides my own writing.
Right.
And I think part of it is like conceptually, it's this woman who's like encountering a group of people who have the legacy of like understanding like femininity and womanhood like based on her image.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of what kind of guides this piece. But like
Very cool.
if I didn't say this now, then you wouldn't know probably.
Yeah, I know you had you mentioned that you'd like the audience to sort of take their own interpretation. Um, what are you hoping, if anything, that the audience takes, like, even if they're going to kind of get their own view and picture of what's happening on stage, like what is the one thing you're hoping they take away, like at the kind of core of that?
Well, I hope they're like, wow, this sounds nice at least. That's or like they can hear me, maybe. I don't know. But then I think after that, I don't think they should walk away just being like, wow, women are so strong and oppressed. Like that,
Right.
I think we just like let's take a more nuanced approach to like everything. And see how that kind of shapes the way that we live in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And in terms of on the subject of the audience, what are you most excited to showcase?
I think just my writing,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah, fair enough. Um, and are you doing with this piece right now? Like, what is the future looking like right now? Do you have any idea of future performances? Are you doing any other fringes or anything like that right now?
I'm currently just doing this Fringe, which is Fringe North, and then I think I might just like submit to some more competitions with it and other things, see if there's other like chances to explore it further into my career as an artist, that I can like go return to it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's exciting. There's a whole ton of opportunity. I mean, it's nice that you're in Toronto because there's so many things constantly popping up. So that's great. Well, I guess you're in, well, you're Scarborough, which is, I don't know if there's, where do you
I'm
consider yourself
currently
based?
I'm currently living in Mississauga,
Oh,
but
Mississauga, not
it's
Scarborough.
okay.
Sorry, I mixed up
That would
the,
be a very far commute to school.
yes.
Um, but I will be living in Toronto, and I do think like in terms of outside of school opportunities that I've had in theater have been mostly in Toronto. But also like the CU in Northern Ontario have like had many opportunities there. So I think I like would consider myself to be kind of like between Toronto and Northern Ontario at the moment.
Amazing. Yeah, that's sort of how I approach my work as well. Do you find that I, I mean, you said most of the opportunities have been in Toronto, but in Mississauga, then is there sort of a sub arts community, or is it kind of mostly tied into the greater Toronto community?
I'm not really sure. I know that there is like there's UTM theater.
Mhm.
There's I know there's a Mississauga Fringe Festival actually. It's like
I've heard about
I
that. I
think it's
don't know much.
multilingual. Is
Yeah.
like yeah. Um, and there are theaters in Mississauga. I've just not really been involved with them at all. It's also very hard to get places in Mississauga if you can't drive. So
That's true. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard about that multilingual one. I wanted to find out more information, but I haven't so far, but it sounds really interesting. That's cool. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I want to see if I can connect with them at some point. Um, and then I guess just to, well, I before we wrap up, I am curious what doing a one person show. I was interviewing someone earlier that was talking about doing a solo show and the experience of um, working sort of off an audience and how the audience represents almost the scene partner. How do you see the audience while you're up on, or how do you envision that you're going to kind of interact with the audience while they're up on stage? I'm curious your perspective and like how what relationship you'd like to have with them.
Yeah, I think for me, not so much like envisioning them as the scene partner in terms of like obviously there's different ways of doing a solo play. So like in some like you'd be like, I am just being me talking to the audience the whole
Yeah,
time. This is a solo show. So it's not that because I'm playing characters. And I think for me, like the audience is the audience and they're there to see a solo play, and that solo play is being performed by me, and I acknowledge that they are there. Like that,
cool.
yeah,
Very interesting.
expect some eye contact.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, and I know that it's a very intimate space that you'll be performing in, so I think it'll lend itself really well to the piece and that audience connectivity. Um, yeah, if you had to do a quick elevator pitch, I think I probably made you do this last year. I usually make artists do this. A quick elevator pitch on why someone should see your show in particular. What would you say?
If you want to, uh, with your own free will, come to it. Yeah, I think if you like theater and language and hearing words and maybe picking through them and seeing what comes through to you, I think that's kind of who this is for. Like, as well as, yeah, like my mom might be there. So if no one else is my mom who would be there for the same reason as her, but like if you have, uh, I think there's like this family connection of like to the North is kind of like part of this like themes, and I think if you like if that resonates, maybe that would be a reason other than like having like an eclectic taste in theater and like wanting to see what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm not very good at selling things, but that's what it is.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think you're right. I having just heard the snippet of the piece, just if people like, um, you're right. It seems like a until you actually kind of get the context of seeing it, saying that like if you like words is like it's hard to like picture what that means, but go see it and you'll know what it means. And like it's the way you play with language is so unique, and I definitely recommend anyone who has who feels like that might resonate to go check it out for sure. It was really nice having the time to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. And same.
Yeah. Do you have anything you would like to plug or anywhere people can kind of check out your work on social media, anything like that?
I do have like my own personal social media accounts if you want to like find me there. You can. My name is Avery McMillan and it's spelled the way that it's on the screen and I'm assuming captioned. So yeah,
Amazing. All right. And I don't know if you remember your performance dates offhand.
I think they are the 18th and 20th, which is
So
Friday
it'll be in
and
the description,
Sunday.
but great. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Merci, miigwech, gracias. And just a reminder that Fringe North 2023 will be this year from August 16th to the 20th. And you can check out our website and all our social media channels in the description below for more information about the festival. And if you want to support all the work our team is doing here, I should mention that Avery is also a member of our team. So if you want to support the work that we're doing and the rest of our amazing team, you can consider tipping the Fringe, which will also be in the description down below. We will be back with some more podcasts leading up to the festival, August 16th. Thanks so much again, Avery.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.